Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let me bring on Mr. Paul.
You call me Mr. Paul.
Black and white.
No, you didn't. No, I'm not. You didn't see anything.
Oh, snap. Let me plug in my headphones. Maybe you're playing into my headphones.
That is incredibly acceptable as of right now.
Sorry, what's that? What's acceptable?
I said it's incredibly acceptable
okay.
for me to be playing in your headphones, outside of your headphones. Wherever my voice must haunt you.
Nice.
I will allow it. Allow it. I can't really do anything about it, but really, I'm just mumbling to check my audio levels right here. I'm just kind of saying random words.
Well, we are live. I got people coming in a little bit later of a stream for me. I normally wrap up at 2:30, so I probably got about an hour.
Yeah, that's perfect.
But I did want to have this conversation. I do think that there is relevant content that I covered, which was obviously the Tucker Carlson thing. Also, I covered your Pisco versus Dave Green / distributors conversation.
Epic.
It was epic. What happened is normally I dislike Dave Green. Normally I dislike Dave Green a lot. And what ended up happening was I disliked him for the first 3/4 of the conversation. And then at the very last quarter of the conversation, I was like, oh, shit, I don't hate Dave Green. He just got hella autism. He's just got autism like a motherfucker.
Dave Green definitely is on the autism spectrum. So is Pisco.
Yeah.
At least his lawyer training is giving him autism.
He gets debate brained for sure. But Dave Green, he was like, yeah, man, I just really love the Holy Roman Empire. And I think there's a bunch of, different warring ethno-religious groups inside the United States. And what's going to solve this is a pseudo-authoritarian Habsburgian Christian monarchy that keeps the peace among all these rival ethno-religious groups. I was like, oh, shit. This dude just read some like Holy Roman Empire history and he was like, oh, this is based. And then he wanted to
return to HRE.
He wanted to return to HRE. That's all that happened. It's like me with Rome. I'm like, I think Rome's based. I want to make like the new Rome. That's all that happened. So I'm Rome, he's HRE.
Well, I think
he thinks Rome is degenerate.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the critiques of liberalism that come out of the new right are interesting and compelling, and I think he articulates some of them well. But yeah, I don't fully know all of his views.
That's like the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski had all sorts of beautiful, insightful, descriptive criticism of capitalism in the post-industrial world.
I got to read his manifesto still.
But well, I would say like I read the first 10 pages and I was like, oh, this is brilliant. And then I think it, as in all things, it's where the prescription becomes super fucking soy and shitty. Same thing with Marx, man.
That's fair.
If you read the Communist Manifesto, I thought when I first read the Communist Manifesto, I thought the first 2 or 3 pages were a love letter to capitalism. Because the first 2 or 3 pages are like, we have more wealth than we've ever had in our lives, and industrialism has raised humanity out of the comparative squalor of feudalism. And he's basically writing a love letter to capitalism for like the first like 2 or 3 pages. And then after that, he's like, oh, but wealth inequality is so bad that we need to destroy the system and, institute a egalitarian socialist ideal.
Yeah, you can forgive him because he was at the time, witnessing children die in factories and all that, which, we're a little bit distant from. So it made sense that he was as critical and vitriolic against capitalism back then. We have much more nice, comfy capitalism.
We do, and that's actually that's another argument though for mixed economy capitalism. A lot of socialists, so a lot of American right wingers view FDR as the person who brought socialism to America because he obviously created like the welfare state in the New Deal and a bunch of like not authoritarian, but he did use the presidency in order to institute programs that I don't think are necessarily constitutionally supported, but the argument from the far left is that he's the man who actually saved capitalism, because welfare capitalism is what de-radicalized the plebeian masses from falling into the propagandistic shitholes of fascism and communism And so the far left actually hates FDR for saving capitalism.
Yeah, well, there's a lesson there. You should synthesize the good ideas of the people you disagree with.
Well, that's another thing that I hate is whenever somebody says like, "Oh, this idea is left wing," or "This idea is right wing."
Yeah.
And then they use that as a standalone insult with which to dismiss 100%. An entire idea.
These are X talking points, as if that's an argument that dismisses, the point. It's just like, okay. You see Nick Fuentes on Tucker Carlson?
I did. I watched probably the first half. Most of it was origin story. But I do understand that the majority controversial clips that are coming out of it are effectively Tucker Carlson not pushing back on
I would have liked
Fuentes' sanitization of his own perspectives.
I would like Tucker to have pressed him more on a variety of things. Nick is a racialist.
Probably his love of Stalin.
That I was like, to me, that's so obviously a troll. He's like, it's an important day to me, Stalin's birthday. It's like, okay. That's less important than the, hey, America is fundamentally white and it must be a white nation, and, does he want segregation to come back?
Did he say white or did he say white majority? What did he say?
I don't recall. I believe he says white majority. I don't know. The biggest problem with Nick Fuentes is you don't know what he believes because he's so ironic sometimes and then, contradicts himself and stuff. I agree Tucker should have pushed harder. I would have liked to have seen more back and forth about why do you keep saying the Jews when there are so many left-wing Jews, or just not even left-wing, like Dave Smith is not left-wing. There's many Jews who are opposed to Israel. There's a difference between Jews and Israel. And I don't think there was enough of that. So
because the hide the ball thing, in my opinion, is, and I wish Nick still took debates from randos, but in my opinion, the reason why is because appealing to the, I don't know, what is it, like 80%, 90% of Jews support some kind of Zionism, right?
Yeah.
And so as a result, even if you can point to the 10% and say, oh, these Jews aren't supportive of the state of Israel, he's going to say as a whole, the Jewish population is supportive of the Zionist project of Israel. Therefore, they're either complicit or they're active participants in the thing that I'm criticizing.
Right, which is as dumb as saying, well, because 90% of black people vote Democrat, you might as well just assume black equals Democrat. We'll just use those words interchangeably. It's like, no, that's ridiculous. And in fact, the number of black people voting Democrat has gone down, and the number of Jews that support Israel has gone down. And the biggest problem with Nick Fuentes is he fosters a degenerate attitudes towards Jews that prevents Jews from feeling free to be able to criticize Israel. Right, because you're sort of reinforcing the whole, well, they don't want us here in America, so we have to go. We have to have an Israeli state for us to go to.
Well, and this is what's frustrating me. So Kay is asking a question, and I know Kay, but she's saying, but can Jews not be supportive of Israel and still deserve to live in America? Right there, we're already talking about something that's extra constitutional. Because as far as I know, within the First Amendment confines, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, the right to peaceably assemble, all that kind of stuff. It's effectively freedom of speech, freedom of conscience. So even if you're a pro-Zionist Jew, why would that ever be a political yardstick upon which you could be denaturalized or deported or incarcerated or killed? And that's where, sorry, real quick, there's a groiper in my chat named Justin who's like, oh, Nick never hides what he says. But then Nick says that, like, Jews in America need to be dispossessed of power. And I'm like, what the fuck do you think that means?
Justin is the only groiper I like. I don't agree with
Black
much
Justin?
Or all. Black Justin, yes. I've interviewed
Black
him before.
Justin. Cool.
Yeah, the whole denaturals, whatever. I agree. That's ridiculous. And the more that you push that, it's just like you're undermining the good points that you do make.
Well, I did see a black gentleman on Twitter as well he got frustrated with the interview, and he was basically like, well, if this is conservatism, then fuck y'all, which, by the way, I think that means that you have a fairly shallow understanding of conservatism in the first place, if that's what you say. However, I appreciate his instinct effectively saying that, like, well, if we're talking about like denaturalizing and deporting United States citizens who have already been here for multiple generations, then I'm not a part of your political project. And I'm happy to see some level of revulsion against the far left.
However,
Or far right, excuse me.
all the stuff about dual loyalty and dual citizenship, I think dual citizenship should be illegal. I think it's ridiculous that we allow that. There's other countries that don't allow it. It doesn't make any sense. Teddy Roosevelt said, if you're not like, if you're either loyal to America only or you're not an American. And it wasn't racist when he said it, and it's not anti-Semitic when he said it. And so I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that people should not have dual citizenship or dual loyalty in general.
You should actually read Teddy Roosevelt's book, the Rough Riders book. It's a little.
Is he pretty racist in that? Fine. That said,
hold on.
Okay.
I want to expand it though. It was very progressive for the time. Okay,
there we go. Great.
He was like, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but he's like, listen, even though the Africoids have a strange skull shape, they can still be Americans as long as they buy into the American project.
Based.
So
Based.
He was
Progressive.
probably realistically saying that about. He was talking. What I'm exaggerating, of course. What he said though is that the United States is an Anglo-Saxon project, and in order to be a part of the ethno-religious, cultural offspring of the American experiment, you have to buy into the experiment. So regardless of whether or not you're some swarthy Italian or Celt or Irish or whatever, you have to buy into the American project, or else you're not an American. And there was like some racy stuff, but it wasn't like, it was probably progressive for like 1920, man.
Sure,
but it was probably super progressive for 1920.
Yes, but that idea in the current context, there's very clearly a very pro-social way to believe, hey, you should only have citizenship in the United States if you are a citizen of this country. You should not have multiple citizenships. You should not have dual loyalty. And I think that's perfectly fine. And I think that to the degree that like someone like Nick points out that Jewish identity is relevant in a lot of American Jews' relationship to Israel, that's the most self-evidently, obviously true thing that's ever been said.
Yeah, my Irish identity is relevant to the way that I think about Ireland and English-Irish.
No, not nearly to the same degree that, especially
not nearly to the same degree, but I can imagine it.
Sure. Oh, yes. Yes. But like people who their religion compels them to care about a so-called secular state, that's not good. And that is an issue that needs to be talked about. Now, as a solution, let's deport and denaturalize? No, that's ridiculous. It should be to freely criticize and create the conditions for normal Jews who don't care more about Israel than America to go, yeah, I'm an American, I'm not Israeli, my whole life has been here.
But let me ask you this, okay? Because I think this is where, if you're saying that my affinity, and sorry, real quick, I got a couple of super chats and I want to read them, and then I promise I'll address.
Go ahead.
Tenhauser for 10 says, Semper spooky. True, always spooky. Thank you, King. And Games for Kids 91 says, America is multicultural as fudge and has been for generations. We're going to have different rules, laws than other nations. The question is, what will work here? May not what does dual citizenship look like elsewhere. But that goes into my chat. So I kind of want to follow up with Games for Kids for 91. So I agree with you that my affinity for the homeland of Ireland, based off of my ethno-religious whatever background, is not as strong as a Jewish person's affinity, the average Jewish person's affinity for the state of Israel. Okay. However, a third of my population was not wiped out within 2 generations. My grandparents' generation was not wiped out. I think there were 16 million Jews prior to World War II, and I think the population dropped down to 9 because the European population of Jewry was wiped out.
Sure.
So I think there's a sensitivity there where...
Of course, it's perfectly rational.
Okay.
I fully understand. I'm not blaming any individual Jew, especially if their religion compels you. That's your religious belief. Okay,
but what I was going to ask about even like a secular Jewish person, though, so you're saying that you're sympathetic to like the natural self-interest. Why wouldn't you say, oh, well, 2 generations ago or 3 generations ago, my great-grandparents and my grandparents didn't think it was going to happen to them. And then it happened to them. A third of my ethno-religious group got wiped out, and they are now present. 90% of Jews are present in 2 locations. I think there's a 16 million population of Jewish folks. 7 million people are located in the United States. 7 million people are located in the state of Israel. Yes. And so, so why wouldn't they say like, oh, well...
They're all in Brooklyn, the true Jewish state.
Okay, but why wouldn't they say, okay, I'm an American, but I want Israeli citizenship in case shit goes super bad in North America. That way I can escape to Israel, God forbid something crazy happens. Let's say Nick
Sure.
Fuentes becomes president of the United States. Why wouldn't you be interested in dual citizenship?
It is entirely rational to want that as an individual. I'm not saying it, I'm saying it's not. I'm saying we shouldn't allow it in the same way that I shouldn't have a backup country in case things go wrong here. It's like, well, would we tolerate Russian dual citizenship in terms of, hey, this is a foreign country who has its own geopolitical interests that are oftentimes opposed to ours. Why would we tolerate at the high level, like legally? Why would we allow this? Why would we allow people who have loyalty and citizenship to a different country? Why not just get rid of it like other countries do?
Well, this is something that I think that your brain and my brain are working a little bit differently. Why is nationalism? And I understand what I'm saying. The people, the patriotic pride of the people of your country. Why is nationalism in your mind like a lost sum game?
What do you mean a lost sum game?
Why? So I'm a civic nationalist. Okay, I'm a paperwork nationalist. I want people to be American patriots. I want them to believe in freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, right to self-defense, limited government, all that kind of stuff. So I think that anybody can philosophically become an American spiritually.
True.
I think they can become an American.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is we have allies. We have allies: France, Germany, Israel, Belgium, Ukraine, arguably. These countries have their own interests, and they do come to the United States in order to plead their geopolitical grievances in case for why they want America to help their nations out. Why is that viewed as a lost sum game? Because it sounds to me like the reason why you want to eliminate dual citizenship and dual loyalty is because you're afraid that people will come here under a false pretense of American loyalty, but then they will make arguments and geopolitical strategies that are contrary to the interests of the United States.
Okay, what happens if the interests of your country and the other country you're a citizen of are at odds?
Then you're going to have to choose.
Right.
That happens all the time.
Okay, so why? Right. So the issue is
resent American foreign policy right now.
So the issue is you have people who I feel like this is very straightforward. If let's use Russia as example. If you had a bunch of Russian dual citizens who were lobbying the U.S. government on behalf of Russian interests, self-evidently that would be a problem, would it not?
It's
because Russia's an adversary.
Okay, it's a problem, but then the question is how you resolve it, and also the limits of legality. So, for instance, like Russia today, I think is allowed to broadcast on social media within American spaces. But I think that they've been like prohibited from American TV or some shit. I fucking forget. But the whole point is that you can advocate for the Russian state within the United States. As a matter of fact, we see it on Twitter all the time. But the question is whether or not you're actually an adversary to the point that you will commit a crime on behalf of that adversarial state.
That's not my. I'm not saying. Well, Jonathan Pollard did do that for Israel. It's people.
Was he criminally prosecuted, or did he escape to Israel?
Did he escape? I forget.
I don't know. Jonathan Pollard, you say?
Yeah, the guy who stole the U.S. nuclear secrets and gave them to Israel, which then, I believe, ended up in Soviet hands.
Was he arrested or pardoned? It doesn't matter. Keep going with your point. I'm listening. I'm just Googling
it's just look. It's a straightforward point. If you are in America, you should be America first. Your interests should be that of the nation. And you say, well, but I want a backup country in case things go wrong. Okay, I don't have that. Why should you have that?
Oh my God! Do you know who pardoned the guy who recruited Pollard? Do you know who pardoned the guy who recruited Pollard?
Who? No, I don't know.
Trump.
Who recruited Pollard?
Hold on. Trump pardons Israeli officer who enlisted spy Pollard. President Donald Trump on Wednesday granted a full pardon to Aviam Sela, the handler of convicted Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard, as part of the outgoing presidential spree of clemency actions in his last hours in office. This was written January 20th, 2021.
Yep. Trump is the most...
He's the most
pro-Israel. Yeah, exactly. Because we have dual citizens who walk into his office every day and donate $100 million to his campaign. Miriam Adelson donated $110 million to his campaign. He says very clearly, no one is in the office more than Miriam. Every day or every week they want something for Israel. As soon as I give them something, then they want something else.
Oh, wow. Now we're just being anti-Semitic, huh? You know, when you give a Jew a cookie, that's rude.
Are you talking to me?
No. I'm joking about Trump because the kid story is when you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to want a glass of milk, right? And it's basically a kid's book where you're trying to accommodate a mouse, but you have to keep giving him stuff. And so what I'm saying is it's a Jewish stereotype that they're constantly negotiating. But
okay, well, do you understand that?
But let's say I was an Irish person. Yeah. All right. Let's say I was an Irish person and I had some my parents or grandparents had come to this country. I had some great affinity for the country of Ireland and I was a billionaire. Sure. Mm-hmm. Why would I not be, if I was passionate about my mother country, why wouldn't I be willing and able to lobby my country, my current country, on behalf of my mother country?
No one is saying that that's irrational. What I'm saying is, why shouldn't I, as someone who does not care about that country and does live in this country, care more about my own country than yours?
You can care about your own country than yours.
And part of that is doing
freedom of conscience and freedom of speech.
Yeah, we should make dual citizenship illegal. That's my honestly, that's a particular thing. Whatever, sure. That's fine. The broader issue of it is a problem that you have people like Miriam Adelson donating $100 million to Trump's campaign, being in his White House all the time, and advocating on the behalf of a foreign nation.
But by the way, this is one of my frustrations thing where I was talking about the lost sum game. So why? Okay, I already asked that question, so I guess I'll ask a different question. If we have legitimate geopolitical concerns with because the United States is a commercial empire. Through unilateral and multilateral agreements, sure, we are responsible for $70 trillion of the world's economy. So if we have interest in that region, and if there's a person who has affinity for a country within that region, why wouldn't they be able to advocate? Now, maybe they should register it as a foreign agent. Like I believe in FARA.
Okay, so you think AIPAC should register as a foreign agent?
So the argument there, probably, because they're advocating for a foreign nation. I think the argument that AIPAC has made, though, is that they're not technically members of the Jewish state. They are, a political action American group citizenship. Of concerned Americans.
Yes, it doesn't matter. If a bunch of American citizens who had Russian ethnicity, it doesn't even matter if they had Russian ethnicity, if a bunch of Americans formed a pro-Russia lobby group that regularly talk to the Russian government, that strategize with Russian government officials.
Then they should be registered as a foreign lobbying group or a foreign lobbying agent.
I would recommend you cut this out of your stream because that's the most anti-Semitic thing I've ever heard, suggesting that AIPAC registers a foreign lobby. Good. Just FYI.
I got lots of Jews. They're fine. They're good.
Yeah, but the broader point, I think it's fair to say, hey, if you are opposed to the American relationship with Israel being as strong as it is, which I am, and we can argue about whether or not that's a good idea or not. You say, well, we have geopolitical interest there. It's like, yeah, true. In Qatar, where our largest airbase is, and Israel bombs Qatar. So, this idea that there's no other way to have interest in the Middle East without, supporting Israel to the degree that we do, and sanctioning allowing all of the ethnic cleansing and the settlements and not doing anything about it, not conditioning aid in any way. I think that's ridiculous. I think we should stop doing that. But whatever, that's a separate argument. The point is, if you believe that, as many Americans do, it's perfectly reasonable to say, yes, it is a fair point of discussion to say, yeah, it's probably not great and fair to point out that a lot of people who have influence, who happen to be Jewish, support Israel, like, for example, Ben Shapiro, who's the head of one of the largest conservative media organizations in America, who gets dinner with Netanyahu, has a direct relationship to that. Say, yeah, that's problematic. That's someone who is clearly looking out for the interests of another country and not primarily ours first and foremost. And of course, there's areas where this can overlap, but it's pretty straightforward to me. You can't serve two masters. Nationalists means you serve one country.
Well, but that's my question. So the United States. So you're saying that this is a concern of yours, and I think the concern is moral. If I had to guess, and the moral concern, if I had to stab at it, is the fact that you think that we're involving ourselves with the state of Israel. As a result, it is involving us in unnecessary geopolitical intrigue that not only has geopolitical ramifications for the state of Israel, but also has geopolitical ramifications for the United States that involves the death of innocent American civilians. It involves the military operations of American armed forces. And not all of this is purely rational, self-interested Americanism. It is to a disproportionate benefit to Zionists.
That's not even the main thing. I mean, yeah, of course, the geopolitical issues. The main thing is the fact that, for example, our free speech is being impinged upon because
we're having
for criticism of a foreign country. Sure, yeah. Well, we'll see. We're
also citizens, so they can't even denaturalize us for this conversation. So we're,
right.
I'm a heritage American. They can't take away my rights. Not yet, anyways.
Yeah, but even just saying, well, it's look, it's like we're talking about wokeness, which brings us to the woke right. Okay, like the problem with the woke is that they call you racist for wanting to talk about true things, right? There are racists who bring up facts, no doubt, but you can be not racist and bring up the same facts. Okay, it's the exact same thing with the woke right, who are the pro-Israel right. They will call you anti-Semitic for pointing out basic true statements. Like, yeah, I'm against dual citizenship. I think that if you live in the United States and you're a citizen, your loyalty should be to the United States and your fellow citizens. And obviously you can feel a sense of pride towards a different nation. You shouldn't be dual citizens. You should certainly have to register if you're lobbying on behalf of that nation. And if you're in a position of power, like Larry Ellison or something like that, that's a thing of. It's a fair question to be like, well, if Larry Ellison is a ardent Zionist, hardcore pro-Israel person, and this person is integrating with all of our national security systems and creating databases and getting involved in intelligence stuff, it's like that's problematic, I would say. And I think that's perfectly reasonable to say. And my main issue is the fact that people get called racist or anti-Semitic for even just wanting to have these conversations.
Well, okay, so I think number one, you probably approach this topic in good faith. I don't think that other people with the same perspective or descriptive issues do.
Correct. And they seriously are an impediment to being able to have the conversation, honestly. I agree.
But I want to point out something from the libertarian, I would argue conservatarians might feel this way as well. So when you're talking about Americanism, and this is like a concept that actually I have only recently really thought about the differences between the ideas, and weirdly enough, I think it was a gap in communication between myself and the distributist. Does he go by that, or does he just go by Dave now?
I think Dave.
Okay, so back when Dave was known as a distributist, we had a disagreement on like ethnogenesis and populations and nationalism and what it means and this, that, the other. And I think I was operating at a disadvantage because I didn't differentiate the concept of the nation state. The state being largely the government representing the people, and the nation being the people. And so what I'm kind of trying to get to is the United States is predicated. It's a propositional nation that's predicated on the Constitution of the United States. And within that is the right to freedom of conscience and freedom of speech. And also it's a tolerance of the lies and propaganda of bad faith actors, because freedom of conscience and freedom of speech is more important than bad faith actors and the people who kind of attack freedom of conscience and freedom of speech. And so when it comes to, you're saying, well, you can't be a dual citizen. I don't know what disease we're curing. And then when you say, oh, well, I'm worried, you should not be loyal to a different nation more than you're loyal to our nation. Well, one of the propositional statements of our nation is that you're free to think whatever the fuck you want, as long as you're not doing illegal activity. So, for instance, a fascist and a communist, even though we viscerally disagree on politics, as long as they are not committing crimes, I am not allowed to exclude them from my nation. And same thing with a Zionist. So it sounds like you almost want to exclude Zionists from the American political project.
No. I want to be able to freely discuss the issue of the American relationship with Israel to, in the marketplace of ideas, convince people that we should stop supporting Israel in spite of the fact that there are many Zionists who have a lot of influence. Okay. I think, deporting and denaturalizing is deranged and insane.
Deporting and denaturalizing, though. So deporting, as far as I know, the only people who have been argued for deportation was that one Turkish girl. It's the Zionists who are arguing for the deportation of people criticizing Israel. But
okay, and I'm talking about Nick Fuentes' desire to or whatever has stated, or whoever on the right wants to say.
To denaturalize and deport Zionists?
Yeah, that's deranged and insane.
Okay.
That's what you were referring to, right?
No, I thought that you were referring to the United States currently acting on the behest of Zionists to do the BDS laws, where public entities are not allowed to work with anti-Zionist institutions,
Right, which is deranged.
And then I thought you were also talking about the attempts to deport. I forget this guy's name, but there was a guy in New York who was a professor who participated in some of the protests and building sit-ins, and the Marco Rubio and the Trump administration tried to deport him. I think that was overturned. And then there was a female Turkish gal who was also attempted to be deported for the same thing. They weren't citizens. They were on immigrant visas. And then the Trump administration used like a super general law to try to deport them. But realistically, the reason why they were being deported ostensibly is because of support for jihadist organizations. But realistically, if you look at what is documentable, it's anti-Zionism.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem. And that is who the real woke right is. Maybe we get into
what,
this.
The Zionists?
No. Well, a lot of Zionists are woke right. Douglas Murray, James Lindsay, the conservatives, the right wingers who will accuse people of being anti-Semitic or racist for criticizing Israel. That's the woke right. There is no greater king of the woke right than Douglas Murray, who displayed his royal wokeness on the Joe Rogan podcast with Dave Smith, where he said, "I just think it's weird that you bring up Paul Wolfowitz and Dick Pearl, who U.S. Members of the Secretary Deputy of Defense, whatever that fucking official title is, Paul Wolfowitz." And so this is, Dave Smith is talking about how these people got us into the Iraq War, and there was a relationship with Israel during that. You
mentioned two Jews.
Exactly. It's just odd that you bring up Dick Pearl and Wolfowitz, who have Jewish last names. I'm just saying it's weird. That is archetypal, cut and dry, woke right behavior.
Okay.
There's no argument against it.
Hold on. We are moving into a new topic, and I think we'll be able to dance on this one. But I did get a large super chat, and I want to thank the person for giving it to me.
Please.
Thomas White said, "Love your guys' content. Prayers for both of you to keep fighting the good fight against extremists." P.F. Jung, why do you accept a mimetic American identity, but an essentialist gender identity? To me, these two stances seem extremely contradictory.
There are much greater differences between men and women than men of the same race or women of different races. Excuse me, men of different races or women of different races.
Interesting.
Me and a black male of a similar socioeconomic standing have far more in common than me and a white woman of similar socioeconomic standing.
Interesting.
In my opinion.
Well, let's get into the woke. So
the woke right, Douglas Murray, the king.
Hold on. Let's get into Douglas as an example of woke right, and then let's fight about the definition first.
Okay.
So one of my problems, because it was James Lindsay who brought this up, the woke right meme, and I think him and Jordan Peterson actually had a wildly silly conversation about it, but I kind of loved it because I felt like they were poking at something. They just didn't know how to poke at it. And what they said, which I actually wrote down, I might even still have it in my sticky notes, but what they said is that there are Machiavellian sociopaths who play power games within games, and they are not concerned with necessarily the ideology. They are concerned with climbing to the top of the ideology. That way they can wield power and influence for their own gain. True assessment. So they were using that as a definition of woke right, but I seriously think that I do think that's ridiculous. The reason why I think that's ridiculous is because it is that's a problem within every institution I've ever been a part of.
Correct.
Law enforcement, private sector, public sector, politics, online politics, whatever. There are people who are genuine advocates of an ideology, and then they just happen to accumulate wealth, power, and influence. And then there are people who care about wealth, power, and influence, and they're using an ideology as a vehicle through which to achieve personal self-aggrandizement. And so that's where I thought that definition was silly. And then what I would also say is that I view Trump that way. That was the one thing that was like, pissing me off about the whole conversation was they're both sweeping for MAGA and sweeping for Trump. And they're like, oh yeah, they're megalomaniacs and they lie and they care about self-aggrandizement. and they're egotistical. And I'm like, Trump, Trump,
Yeah.
Trump, Trump, Trump.
Yeah.
But they never said the word Trump, which pissed me off. But anyways, okay.
Right.
We know that's silly. Let's move that aside.
Right. The real woke right are people like Douglas Murray, who
Hold on, don't use
accused
the
Dave
example.
Smith.
Define it. What about Douglas Murray's behavior with Dave Smith made him woke right? Because I might agree with the definition.
Using accusations of racism to chill or silence discussion on a topic. That is the defining archetypal woke tactic.
Okay, but I think that woke, we should take it a bit further. What I would say is that, let's say that there were like a dozen, because I'm pretty sure that if we look at the social justice wave or the anti-social justice wave, there's probably a dozen tactics that we could come up with that were used by the quote unquote woke left in order to contend with ideologies that they didn't like. So it wouldn't just be using proximity to controversial ideas in order to call you a bad thing. That's definitely one of them.
That's the fundamental, most important one. Without
okay, but wouldn't you argue though that, because already I'm thinking of like guilt by association. Like guilt by association is also an argumentative tactic that was used by the far left all the time. I also think that deplatforming and financial attacks were also things that were used by the social justice warriors during the 2010s. That was also considered like a part of the, well, this is outside the bounds of normal, rational civil discourse, but the left is doing it anyways. And then what I would also argue is like censoriousness. Basically using either corporations or the government to censor unpopular ideas. That would be, I would consider probably another woke tactic.
Sure, but the most important one, the one that everyone encountered or the people who encountered it in their workplaces, at their schools, online, amongst their friends. Oh, you are talking about this topic, you think this thing, you said this thing, you must be racist. The current woke right does that, except it's with Israel now. You're criticizing Israel, you're listening to Nick Fuentes, you're not utterly condemning Nick Fuentes at every possible turn, you must be anti-Semitic, you must be racist.
Okay, but my frustration with that is that then, in my opinion, because James Lindsay, who I do not think is woke right, he's Douglas Murray.
He's the jack of woke right. Douglas Murray's the king, and James Lindsay's the jack.
Douglas Murray, who you're calling the king of woke right,
yeah.
I would view them as effectively the moderate right, who's trying to get a grip on the Frankenstein monster that they've created with the dissident right. So by enabling, because I do think that there's actually different branches of the right wing, in my opinion. What I would say is that there's the dissident right or the far right, and I would throw any neo-monarchical, fascist, anarcho-primitivist,
neo-pagan,
feudal, neo-pagan. Take that, grab of like esoteric internet ideas that seem to bleed into our politics sometimes. That's like the far right or the dissident right. Okay.
Yeah. Then we could say far right, dissident right, whatever. Let's define it as far right though.
That is the far right.
Okay.
Then, and I would consider Nick Fuentes a part of that. And I would consider Christian theocrats a part of that. And then I would view the MAGA movement as the mobilization of populism for Donald Trump and his arguably right-wing agenda. And I would view that as like it's a hybridization of like 6 different movements.
Yeah.
And that's MAGA.
Okay.
And so we don't get lost. I won't try to describe each one of the subcomponent movements. Then I would say there's the contrarian right. In the contrarian right, in my opinion, you might be a part of it. The contrarian right are people who effectively they look for why the left is bad. Why the leftists have gone too far, why the social justice went too far, why the liberals went too far, why the progressives went too far. And
is this like Tim Pool?
Tim Pool. Yep. Tim Pool is like the perfect example of contrarian right.
It's funny that I knew exactly who you were going to pick.
By the way, I was watching Sitch and Adam earlier today. I would argue that Sitch and Adam are also, weirdly enough, even if they say, oh, we're liberals, we used to believe in this and we used to believe in that. I think that if you look at the arc of their show, I would argue that they're contrarian right as well. They're looking for reasons why the left are bad. Therefore, you should move over here politically. Or we're giving you a social excuse to move over here politically.
Sure. That's all fine. None of this changes the fact that James Lindsay and Douglas Murray preside over this vast mimetic empire called the woke right. And they are the epitome of the woke right, calling people anti-Semites. And Konstantin Kissin's in this camp too.
But Doobie points out, if you want a demonstration of the woke right, watch the Pierce Morgan debate with Stephen Miller's wife, Katie. She weaponizes identity immediately, then later goes on to complain about identity politics.
Perfect.
And so, but hold on. I think the reason why that I get frustrated with your definition is because I would view these people as opposed. I would view James Lindsay and Douglas Murray as right-wing people who are trying to moderate the right away from anti-Semitism. And then I would almost view Stephen Miller, even though he's a rabid Zionist, I would view him as somebody trying to use a political cudgel with which to beat down his enemies. And I don't think these are the same things. I don't think trying to moderate the political ambitions of your binary political side, which is already problematic by itself. Yeah. I don't view that motivation as the same thing as trying to seize power. Trying to moderate power and trying to seize power are not the same thing.
Sure. I would say it's generally better to group people together based on their behaviors and the consequences of their actions rather than their motivations, although, motivations are relevant. The fact that Douglas Murray and James Lindsay are trying to moderate the excesses of the far right says nothing about whether or not they're effective at it. My entire point was they are empowering and inflaming the far right by using garbage woke tactics that we know turn the average person off and we know have failed for the left and has caused a backlash against the left. They're now using those same tactics to try and suppress the right. I believe that I'm actually one of the people in this space who actually is contending seriously with the far right and trying to temper it by separating, when someone like Nick Fuentes says something that's very pro-social on the face of it, forget whether he's being manipulative or not, draw that out more. Christianity says specifically, interracial marriage is fine. All men are created, all men are created equal. That's the Declaration of Independence. But, we're all made in the image of God. And then when you have the National Socialists and the neo-pagans who are saying Nick Fuentes is a weak slave morality Christian, who's which I'm seeing constantly, and I talk to these people, and so I know, and I actually have a better idea of where the extremism is coming from and how to address it than people like James Lindsay and Douglas Murray, who will say Dave Smith is being anti-Semitic. You create anti-Semitism by constantly calling people anti-Semitic when they're not. And so the fact that they want to temper it doesn't change the fact that the effect is bad.
Dave Smith, to me, isn't an anti-Semite because he hates Jews. He's probably, arguably, a useful idiot for anti-Semites because he's done softball interviews with both Nick Fuentes and what's that MMA fighter?
Jake
Shields. Okay. He's done softball interviews with both of those guys. And then not only that, what he effectively does is he walks people up to the threshold of there's an international Jewish cabal that controls the geopolitical destiny of America. He walks them up to that threshold descriptively. And then at the very last second, right when he's given away all of the descriptive claims to the most virulent anti-Semites like on the planet, he goes, but hashtag not all Jews. He's like, I'm a Jew and I don't support any of that stuff. And that's what he does, man. So he's
I disagree. I don't think so. I think that's a terrible description of what Dave Smith does. I think Dave Smith is so abundantly clear that he does not hate Jews. I've watched probably more than you.
Jews. No. Well, that's already scary by itself. But Dave Smith, though, dude, he is like, I don't care if he has any personal antipathy towards Jewish people. I'm saying that without contest, he is handing anti-Semitic people the descriptive claims with which they need in order to paint an anti-Semitic narrative without challenge. Challenge.
Okay, so I reject. Okay, no, I'll tell you why.
Yes, but I'll listen. I will listen.
First off, okay.
I love you. I will listen.
I know. You could frame this so easily of just, who creates more anti-Semitism, the actions of Israel or Dave Smith?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay, because I could just as easily see anyone who's pro-Israel is a useful idiot for anti-Semites because they aid and abet a state that is committing ridiculous war crimes and ethnic cleansing, which single-handedly produces more anti-Semitism than any influencer on the internet. So is every pro-Israel person a useful idiot for anti-Semites?
So hold on. So let me walk your way, okay? I think that Dave Smith describing the geopolitical intrigues led to the clean break memo and the Iraq invasion does not radicalize people as much as seeing a Gazan teenager's blown up leg, right? Seeing a 12-year-old's blown up leg on TikTok is a more radicalizing force than Dave Smith.
Or however, the genocidal rhetoric coming out of the Israeli officials.
Sure. However, I do think these things are pushing in the same direction. But
I think it's the exact opposite. I think giving a nuanced explanation of, yes, Jewish identity is relevant, for example, in some Jewish people's relationship towards Israel. That doesn't mean it's all Jews. And if you turn around and say, well, actually, to even suggest that Jewish identity has any role to play in this at all, that's you're a useful idiot for anti-Semites, because they're going to point out the same thing. I don't think that's it doesn't matter. I don't care. It's if you are saying true things and you ultimately are doing it in what I believe is a pro-social manner, which not Nick Fuentes, which Dave Smith is, then
okay,
it's just obvious to
me. I think what's going on though is a generational and conversational changing of the guard. And if you could just give me a little bit of rope with this one, okay? So the post-World War II consensus that some people use as a slur.
I hate it. Yes, I'm glad it's breaking down.
Okay, I hate you. But I say I hate you with love. Okay, I hate you. So, anyways,
I'm learning.
Let's.
Obama said it was a great book. So,
that. Well, okay. Obama, Weatherman Underground, secret communist, secret Muslim. Okay. Anyways, that's a joke, by the way, chat. Jesus Christ. Hold on. So the post-World War II consensus, okay? And I want to describe it because maybe we're not talking about the same thing. So World War II was so bad and cost so much blood and so much treasure and was arguably preventable in so many ways that leaders of the free world said, we don't want to wait for World War III to happen. We would rather not allow a power vacuum to occur that will allow World War III, because we don't want to spend the blood and we don't want to spend the treasure. So the Cold War, trying to subvert and prevent the spread of communism, was a proactive attempt to effectively prevent World War III, even though we came close to World War III multiple times. It was also an attempt to defeat the authoritarian nature of socialist and communist regimes, but that's a parallel story. So, along with that came the Jewish narrative of World War II, which was that the United States waited too long in order to get into World War II. As a result, it allowed the mass industrial slaughter of Jews. European, African, and Asian nations and America that refused to take in Jewish refugees through their anti-Semitic distaste of refugees. They actually enabled the industrial slaughter of a third of world Jewry. This is while Holocausts and genocides have occurred simultaneous to this, Armenian genocide, the industrialization of mass slaughter was so insane in Germany that we cannot allow a situation like this to occur again in world history.
Correct.
That's the post-World War II consensus.
Perfectly reasonable,
but what was born out of that
at the time.
But what was born out of that, which I don't think you think is reasonable, is the British Mandate of Palestine, I think, disappeared in 21, I suppose. I would have to check out when the British Mandate ended. But basically, in the era leading up to 48, which is when the State of Israel was established, there was a tension between indigenous Palestinians and Israeli settlers that was exacerbated by the refugees from Europe coming to Israel, that then sparked the birth of Israel, where Israel said, hey, we're an independent Jewish nation state, and if you don't like it, you can go fuck yourself. And then you had the Nakba and the reverse Nakba and all that bullshit. And so the Zionist narrative is that wiping out a third of international Jewry was so terrible that the Jews need a homeland. They need an ethno-religious homeland that is not reliant on the whims of a foreign power. And so while half of the world's Jewish population moved to the United States and arguably have done quite well here, the other half are in Israel, and they've been fighting an existential battle for the better part of a century. This is all descriptive. I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know. So I guess my question is, if we agree that up until we hit the Zionism, we're okay with what happened in the post-World War II consensus or narrative, but then you're not okay with the Zionist narrative, How do you negotiate this going forward, especially considering the geopolitical position that Israel is already in? I'm all about like trying to push back on the settlers. I'm all about conditioning military aid and intelligence sharing based off of the behavior of Israel. What I'm not for is I'm not for the cutting off of all communications, all aid, and all military and intelligence coalition.
Sure, that's fine. I am for conditioning aid on,
but you know they don't need the aid, right?
Well, then why do they lobby so hard? Why does why does it? Then why not just why does everyone complain about? Well, they want to make AIPAC huh?
Well, I was going to say annually it's $3.8 billion that we basically give them. We give them a check.
Yeah. Although what has it been? How much have we given them in the last 3 years since October?
I think it's like 20 billion.
I think it's more than that, but sure, whatever. But yeah, it's not the financial issue. Okay, it's again, it's the George Orwell. Freedom to say 2 + 2 = 4. Everything else follows. You cannot just speak openly.
Now.
Yeah, but my point is the woke right want to. Well, Nick shouldn't be platformed by Tucker. We shouldn't platform these ideas. These people are racist. It's anti-Semitic to do this. Calling names. It's not addressing.
Because they obviously take it to a level that I think rightfully makes not just Jews, but makes tons of liberals and progressives and center-right people uncomfortable.
Call them out for those things they say that are wrong. Not call this person's an anti-Semite, this person's a racist. What are they saying that's specifically wrong? Call them out. When Nick Fuentes says Dave Smith is a Jewish psyop and interracial marriage is bad, you go, those things are fucking... The first thing is it's degenerate to say interracial marriage is bad. It's just pathetic and disgusting. You can call that belief degenerate, which is what it is, and racist and fine, whatever. Although, Jonathan Greenblatt is very upset that Jewish intermarriage rates are going up. I don't know if you saw that. The head of the ADL is upset that interracial marriage rates are increasing in the Jewish community. So don't know what to say about that. Maybe sorry.
No, I know what to say about that.
No, I'm saying I don't know.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Okay, so if honkies hooking up with thick Latinas is good, then Jewish boys hooking up with thick Latinas. There you go. Can't complain.
There you go. So, but my point, and this is what I strive to do is, hey, let's call out the far right for their degenerate bullshit points. Let's not accuse them of being anti-Semitic or racist, even if it's true. It doesn't do anything. It's a woke tactic.
Okay. So I just want to clarify on degenerate, and then I want to move into tactics. Okay. So degenerate, degenerate. So one of the things that I learned in the past, 6 months, was that degenerate was actually within like marketing and within newspapers of like the late 19th and early 20th century was actually understood in its original terms to mean bad for your health or bad for your spirit. Generate means making something.
Yes.
Degenerate immoral. Means make something worse. And so the reason why drugs are degenerate, or the reason why promiscuity would be degenerate, is not because just because, woke Christian moralizing. It would be because promiscuity correlates with disease that then infects and damages your body.
Cultivation of vice.
Drugs and the cultivation of vice would actually deal with a spiritual and physical decay.
Yes.
And so conceptualizing that actually totally reoriented the way that I conceptualized degenerate.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if many people would agree with your use of degenerate in reference to being against race mixing is degenerate. The way that I would use it is that it inflames ethno-religious racial tensions within the United States.
Yeah.
Well, no. I'm not even explaining. I'm trying to say that like the reason why I would view it as degenerate is because it makes the American project worse, not better. It degenerates the American civic nationalist project.
Yes, it's anti-human. It's disgusting. Are you a football fan by any chance?
I'm not.
You know who Saquon Barkley is?
No.
Okay, never mind then.
But he has a last name like Barkley, so I'm assuming that
he's like one of the best running backs in the NFL. His wife's white, and their daughters.
Are they like beautiful?
They're beautiful. The Eagles. They interviewed
his wife Giga Blonde.
I think so. Yes.
Dude, I quote tweeted them on Twitter because they posted their figure. They were in like Texas in a cowboy hat, and they were posing with their beautiful family. And I was like, "No, you're being genocided." Stop.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, well, I watched a video of.
That was sarcastic, by the way, for those of you who might have retweeted that seriously.
I watched a video of their two daughters interviewing the rest of the members of the football team, and it was like the most pure, wonderful thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Sorry, I just might have to help out the wife. I need a hard out. So, baby, can I have 8? Because we're hitting an hour. We need to do this more. But I'm 10, and then I got a hard out. I got a crying baby and a wife.
That's fine.
Sick.
Yeah, you could take 5 if you want. I don't want to keep you any longer.
I don't want to take 5 because basically I need 5 to wrap, and then we should do this because we didn't finish what we're talking about.
Yes, I mean, you really have to take 10 minutes. If you need to leave now, you can go. Yeah, that's fair.
No,
okay, my point is...
Let's do 3 to 5 outros, and then let's do this again soon, because we did is we tackled the topic. We didn't even get into prescription. So yes, please.
Right. My point is, that was so pure, and and then when I hear someone like Nick Fuentes complain about interracial marriage or whatever, just like truly it's just degenerate and immoral. And people are like, well, but, you're against calling him anti-Semitic, but you're okay with calling him a freak or degenerate. It's like, yes, people calling someone a freak, if they're a freak, actually does something about marginalizing them. Calling someone racist, even if they are racist, doesn't really do anything anymore because the term's been overused.
If this is a tactical argument, though,
it largely is. It's a pragmatic, practical.
No, then I'm with you, and I think, by the way, a lot of people don't like your centrist bona fides. However, I think that this is actually the ecological, biological, sociological role of the centrist is to understand multiple sides, consume the information, steelman the arguments, make it more understandable, make it more palatable, and facilitate conversation. So I actually, you can hate Paul all you want, but I think he's actually serving his political ecological role. My frustration though, and I think this is probably what I need to articulate, and then we need to wrap. But my frustration, and I think some of the frustration in my chat, is that since you've been focused on the dissident right and the far right, you've taken their ideas so seriously from a steelman perspective that you have like dual loyalty or like
dual citizenship
or multinational loyalty.
Which is what Teddy Roosevelt railed against. Okay,
sure. But anyways, the point is that because you've been swimming in these circles for so long, you treat these, maybe they're problems. Okay, maybe they're problems. But you seem to treat them with a level of like existential deference that doesn't seem sane to people who are not hanging out in dissident right wing.
To people who are ignorant and don't know what they're talking about, yes, they probably have issues with how I'm going about things.
But what you said though, for me though, you said 4 things, and I've kept it. It's at the top of my notes.
Yep.
Wealth inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, and the dissolution of the social fabric. I correct me if I'm wrong, but what you said was that these are the motivators that are effectively radicalizing our population, left or right. Mm-hmm. These are the things that are pushing people into the fringes. And so what I see you doing is I see you going into the far right, understanding their arguments, breaking them apart, et cetera, seeing what's good, seeing what's bad, all that kind of shit. And then you're making a tactical argument. Hey, don't just call these people bad people, because if you call them bad people, you're not actually changing any of their beliefs. Contend with what they're saying, and then actually give them like a viable alternative.
Yes.
I agree with you completely from a tactical perspective. However, you have to understand that when you're proselytizing to these various tribal groups, in my opinion, there's so much here. I think that the most popular political pundits on the planet, they are not idea makers. They are prophets of a pre-existing ideology. All they do is like, I don't even think Dave Smith has really like changed any of his opinions probably since he was 17. He is a libertarian prophet.
You just hate Dave. Your hatred for Dave Smith blinds you.
I do hate Dave Smith. But I would say the same thing for Destiny or Vosh or Hassan Piker. They might have like a unique take every now and then, but if you look at 90% of what they say, and I'm not saying this to be insulting to Steven, I'm trying to say it descriptively, it will fall in within, for Destiny, it'll be the liberal framework. For Vosh, it'll be within the libertarian far left framework. With Hassan Piker, it'll be the anti-imperialist authoritarian left framework. Mm-hmm. And so the whole point is that those are not the people who go into different tribes. They're the most popular people. but they're not the people who go into different tribes and then break off members and then move them into new tribes. And so I guess my thing that I'm trying to say to you is, you might be trying to understand this to the maximal degree. And you're saying if you're trying to break people out of these political tribes, then you need to take my tactical approach. But the question is, move them to where, right? Because not everybody likes centrists. As a matter of fact, shitloads of people don't like centrists.
No, you're telling me for the first time. Wow. This is the first time I'm hearing this. I didn't know.
But I'm just saying, like, I think you and I are probably like fairly parallel in having heterodox views. And then our audiences, I don't know about your audience, but I feel like my audience, they're not from a specific political tribe. They're heterodox thinkers. They're people who think.
Well, besides the autistic Destiny fans in my audience, I have a lot of free-thinking, intelligent people.
Right.
Which is partly why I'm not big on condemnation all the time. It's like, by the way, I'm going to say my opinion on something, but because I think my audience are a bunch of sheep, I need to remind you, like, this person's a bad person. It's like, here's my opinion on this thing. I'm assuming my audience is intelligent enough that they watch me and can form their own opinions, and I'm just adding to the mix of things to form their opinions about. Now, am I aware that there are people who are impressionable and I've influenced? Yeah, sure, of course. And I think I do a perfectly reasonable job of condemning all the bullshit that I think needs to be condemned and not being overly like, oh, this is a bad person, blah, 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 I can't talk to him. This is all because my thesis statement, I have heard all of this bullshit about Destiny for years. I don't care. And I don't care about Nick Fuentes. I don't care how horrible Destiny is as a human being or what he said. He needs to be, the ideas he puts forward should be contended on the face of it. Same with Nick Fuentes.
Okay.
That's how I feel.
I do have to run. However, what I would say is, like I'm talking to North, who is a never Trump Republican. I talked to Ryan Mullally, who's somebody who believes in fundamental, like, natural rights. He likes talking about natural rights. Obviously I have Grassroots Hegemon in that same group chat, and he's kind of like a conservatarian, libertarian. And so, what I would say for the next conversation, not only do I want to continue to fight a little bit, about what the woke right is, because I think that you are using it to describe tactics, whereas maybe I should use far right instead of woke right. I don't know, but we need to parse that out a little bit. And then I also think that we need to. I love freak right, and then we need to move into. Okay, so we believe that tactically it's smarter to contend with the steelmans in order to chip people away from an ideology. But then where are you moving these people to? And I think that's like a perfect thing. So I got to run. Can you shout yourself out to the chat?
Godspeed. Paul, P.F. Jung. See you guys on the flip. Happy Halloween. Peace.
All right. Parasocial love, bud. I'll catch you soon.
Godspeed.
All right. So I just need to thank you guys real quick because the wife is actually suffering. So I need to go run and take care of her. Doobie, thank you for the 10. Thomas White, thank you for the 50. Big Leafy, thank you for the 6. Games are for kids. Thank you for the 20. 10 Hauser. Thank you for the 10. And Snake and Bake. I think that's King Solidus. King Solidus, thank you for the membership. I do have to run. I'm sorry that I have to go, but I parasocially love you guys. I'll see you on Monday. Have a great day. Bye for now.